fell like glossy confetti. It had been raining all week, a gentle and pleasant rain that coloured the tree trunks black and brought a constant chill to everyone's cheeks. The dark season had arrived early this year. Max had spent the entire autumn working on a manuscript with a March deadline that was approaching at a nerve-wracking speed. Whenever he glanced out of the window of his office in the afternoon, he was always surprised to see how short the days were. That same autumn, their younger daughter, Eva, had moved to London, and Katrina had sunk into what she herself called a depression, although Max thought this was simply a self-absorbed description of what happened to all parents when their children got older. By turning this transition into a personal crisis, Katrina was able to use it for her own dramatic purposes. 3 months earlier, when they'd driven Eva to the airport, Katrina had talked on and on, as she always did, about what Eva should do after her year in London, what opportunities might be open to her, how she should arrange her life, and how much money she needed to save each month if she managed to get a job. She'd also mentioned as one possibility that Eva could resume her abandoned studies in Helsinki and maybe even study for her master's exams. "Do you know what? I really don't want to think about that, Mum. Not everybody wants to plan their life down to the smallest detail," Eva said from the back seat of the car, where she was texting on her mobile phone. She'd spent the whole summer living at home with them because she'd given up her flat when she was accepted at the art school in London. She claimed she needed to save money, even though she'd never tried to find a summer job. She was 29 and had whiled away the summer lying on the balcony getting a suntan and drinking wine. Okay, I'm just saying that it would be good if you had some sort of plan." "But I do have a plan. I'm going to study art, and hopefully I'll be dating a lot of hot British guys. That's enough for me. Do you know how hard it is to get into this field?" I know, and we're so proud of you." Max had tried to keep out of it. He really was very proud of Eva. Katrina and Eva often argued about things that Max found totally incomprehensible, but he assumed it was because they were so alike. They both possessed a certain proprietary view of the world. He realized that Eva had inherited this tendency from Katrina, but he had no idea where his wife might have come by it. He found it to be one of those personality traits that was easy enough to admire in theory, but much more difficult to live with. For as long as he'd known Katrina, she'd never once hesitated if there was something she wanted. Tonight, he'd said to Katrina that maybe she shouldn't be calling Eva every week, that maybe their daughter should be allowed to establish her own life in London. That had led Katrina to yell at him because he'd made plans to play tennis 2 hours before the dinner party at the Ristorantila's place. Then he'd said that maybe she shouldn't be drinking so much wine on an empty stomach, and she responded by saying that she wouldn't need to drink if he spent more time with her. And they'd continued on like that until Max slammed the door and went out in the rain to go over to the indoor tennis courts. He'd played like a fiend, irritably and without finesse, and by the time he got back home and stepped into the front hall, his mood was even worse. In the end, they'd caught a cab to the Keskinen's party, although without exchanging a word during the entire drive. Max didn't have a driving license. When they met 30 years ago, Katrina had admired him for refusing to join the ranks of car owners. Nowadays, she ridiculed him for the very same reason. She claimed that for all these years, his decision had been more a question of indolence and stinginess than any concern for the environment. They arrived 20 minutes late, just in time to join everyone else at the dinner table. Max sat down, noticing that he either knew or at least recognized most of the other guests, Vivan and Pertti, Tila and Risto, who nodded a greeting as he walked around the table pouring everyone a vodka, and several of Katrina's work colleagues accompanied by their respective spouses. Also seated at the table was a Norwegian couple, who'd been to their home for dinner on a couple of occasions. The husband's name was John, and Max recalled that he was a man of few words but a highly likable expert on international trade law. At the far end of the table sat Stefan and Gunmai,